Welcome to Lawyerpreneur, where we discuss the alternate paths that allow lawyers to engage their entrepreneurialism and distinguish themselves from others, because being a lawyer doesn't have to mean doing business as usual. I'm your host, Jeremy Richter. Today's episode is brought to you by ALPS Insurance, the nation's largest direct writer of lawyers' malpractice insurance. Founded for lawyers by lawyers over 30 years ago, ALPS works directly with your firm, no broker or agent, and if you do have a claim, the ALPS claims handling team is comprised of actual attorneys, all with private experience. ALPS roots for the law firms they protect. They believe in your success and nurture your endeavors with industry-leading coverage, risk management resources, and accredited CLEs, offering practical advice for pioneering lawyers like you. And ALPS has the slickest online application out there. Qualifying firms can apply, see rates, and bind coverage in about 20 minutes. Right now, you can get 25% off one CLE seminar from ALPS. Go to alpsinsurance.com/CLE. That's ALPS insurance.com/CLE and use the promo code Lawyerpreneur upon checkout. In addition to the corporate sponsorship that helps pay for the hosting and transcription of the show, you can support Lawyerpreneur on Patreon at patreon.com/lawyerpreneur. For less than the cost of a .1, you can help pay for the time it takes in creating and editing Lawyerpreneur and receive copies of my two most recent books, Stop Putting Out Fires and Level Up Your Law Practice. Now, on to the interview. All right, my guest today is Mark Bassingthwaighte. He is a risk manager at ALPS Insurance, where he's been since 1988. He has presented over 400 CLEs and has written extensively about risk management, ethics, and technology. And so we're going to talk about a lot of those things today. Mark, welcome to Lawyerpreneur.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. And so actually, you and I just wrapped up a different conversation.
Yes.
Where you interviewed me for your podcast. And some of the things I think that we're going to talk about today are notes that I made that I want to continue
Yes.
of those conversations. So if people want to pause this and check out your podcast, tell them the name of the podcast and where to find it.
It is ALPS in brief, and just go to the corporate website. It's ALPS Insurance, one word, alpsinsurance.com. And under risk management, the blog is there, and there's all sorts of resources, all kinds of things. So just go to the corporate website.
Okay, good. All right. So my first question for you has to be this. You chose a profession where, as a lawyer, you have to deal all day with lawyers as clients.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, why choose a profession where your lawyers are your clients?
It's a good question, and one I haven't really chewed on a whole lot, because I really did start down this path of a traditional law practice after law school. Hung up a shingle with a fellow classmate, and gave it a shot. But I honestly would have to say I was not passionate about that, and just had an opportunity, a happenstance conversation over a backyard fence. I am not kidding you, that ultimately took me into the ALPS world, and it really became apparent early on that this was a good fit. I am more comfortable. That might not even be the best word. I think my skill set is better utilized in an educational kind of role, in a consulting kind of role, in a supportive kind of role, as opposed to lawyering. And lawyers do that stuff too. I understand that, but this is uniquely 100% that space. And it has really proven to be a very, very good decision. So,
well, and I want to go off of that because my last podcast episode was with Haley Altman, who worked in a big law firm with startups and really enjoyed her job, but then ultimately left to form her own startup. And she enjoyed lawyering, but had an opportunity that she couldn't walk away from.
Yeah.
you made a transition, but it sounds from what you said, you didn't enjoy the lawyering side of it. And she and I talked about, having to reconcile with yourself. This is the career I thought I was preparing for in school, and actually I'm going to do something else. And that the mental hurdle that's involved there. What was that like for you deciding, what, I don't love this and I want to do something else?
Um, I guess law is a little bit of a second career for me in the sense I didn't go to law school until I was 30. So I was doing some other things. And I think that really benefited me just to have a few extra years. I approached the whole law school process differently than a lot of the younger students. Um, but I really was comfortable, and even in the law school years, understanding that I don't know where this takes me, but it is a skill set that can go well beyond. I mean, I know there are a lot of lawyers or a lot of people out there with JDs. Some of them get, barred, some of them don't, but that are not traditional lawyers. And so I just had faith that, if this doesn't work, I can do other things. And, that faith, I guess, was warranted. So
Yeah. Well, I can appreciate that in that I was a high school teacher for 6 years before going to law
oh,
school.
yeah,
And so, I approached it differently
yeah,
and had some different life experiences than, my classmates. So that really
right.
registered what you were saying there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, all right. So now you do risk management.
Hmm.
And so I'm in insurance defense. So I think may have an appreciation for that isn't standard. So what is risk management? What do you do on a daily
Well,
basis?
it has really evolved over the years. Initially, my two principal responsibilities were sort of writing, you know, blog posts. At the time, it was articles that would be sent out, newsletters and whatnot, and a lot of consulting. I used to go out 2 weeks of every month on the road, visiting and consulting with law firms of all shapes and sizes all over the country. I've literally, now I think we ended up at about 1,250 firms. Visits would be from a few hours to up to a week with larger firms. And so it is really about, again, education, taking the intellectual capital that a malpractice insurer has, and trying to share that with as many as we can, whoever ever would listen. And the hope and idea initially was that this would help reduce claims, and be a benefit to everybody, win-win all the way around.
Yeah.
So I maybe a spoiler here. I'm not for sure it did that, and we can talk about that. But so that was most of my life for a lot of years. Now it's a lot more lecturing. I talk about writing. One of the things I'm just about to start I think it's 15th or 16th movie script. Uh,
Really?
and I do write short movies about lawyers that are used as educational tools, and we tour them around the country. My current sort of format, it used to be we'd have these you go into law offices, it's all office space set up to look like a law firm, but and actors and things, but it would be sort of a day in the life of a lawyer, and we'd put them in these ethical situations, and then talk about it. Now I'm writing. It's Ethics Tonight with Tony Hotline Leone, and it's basically think Late Night with Letterman, and musical
Hmm.
guests, all sorts of stuff, and it's been a lot of fun. So it's been interesting how this has evolved over the years.
So is writing something that you've done, outside of your professional capacity as well?
Uh, Not much, to be honest with you. It's a long story. As a child, I really had a dream that I wanted to be a writer. That really was, but I was told by um, someone that was very special in my life, that would never happen. It's not
Mm.
realistic. You can't, make any money, and all this. And I just, that just crushed
Yeah.
a little kid. I was like 9 or 10 when that conversation occurred. And it was something off the cuff, but it's interesting how these odd little things. So I went in very different directions. But I have really found more and more a voice. I've got some books in me. When I retire, one of the books I want to write is How Not to Practice Law, Observations of a Risk Manager, and share a lot of interesting stories. Because the one surprise for me, and I'm really sincere in this, lawyers have such a bad reputation, in terms of the community at large. And that's not well deserved. The number of lawyers that I have met that are really just good people trying to do the right thing, overwhelmingly the majority of lawyers, and so I want to have some fun and share these crazy stories. But
well, it sounds like even though the childhood dream may not have been realized in the way that you had imagined at that point, you chose a path that has allowed you to do a lot of writing as a part of your career, whether it's the blog posts and the content for CLEs and then movie scripts. That do you find that has fulfilled that creative well?
It really has. And, again, I didn't go into this thinking, oh, now I can write. I found that very scary, to sit down and write, and it just, who am I to be telling all these lawyers, how to practice law, and how to document files and do all these things, and it just, so it was hard. But referring back to our earlier discussion, it also really has been very, very fulfilling, and it has reignited just a lot of creativity. And so.
Well, I first became aware of ALPS Insurance through its activity and engagement on Twitter, and so over the years, ALPS has promoted articles that I've written, articles from Attorney at Work and the ABA Journal, and they share those things, and other sources as well. But why has ALPS put so much focus and attention on its social media involvement?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's this whole marketing kind of thing, but it gets back to, in my mind, the evolution of risk management from a desire to try to reduce claims. Now, the problem with that model is, when you're going out visiting, people that consume risk visits, which is what they were called, and want to follow the blogs and read the articles. These are good firms that want to be better firms, and you really don't get into the firms that need the help and really should have the help. This is perhaps a discussion for another day, but so realizing that we kind of repositioned risk management into a marketing. I'm actually part of a marketing team, and we are a company that values education and sharing intellectual capital. So the presence in social media is primarily about taking advantage of every channel that we can to try to find ways to have the lawyers that aren't aggressive about going out and getting this stuff, trying to get their attention. And, it's just so to try to speak to as many people as we can. I mean, that's a long answer. The short answer is trying to speak to as many people as we can.
And I think that speaks to a broader principle. So when you said earlier that the risk visits and all the other material that's made available may not have the desired effect, it sounds like it's because
the people who need it most aren't seeking it.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's true. In my practice, I can only help the clients that really want to be helped.
Exactly.
And I can expend all of the effort and energy I want with those that don't want to be helped, but it's going to fall on deaf ears, and they're going to be the ones that continue to have problems. And so I guess whether that's parenting or having clients or any number of things, you can only help the folks that want to be helped.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah.
In social media, while we're here, are there things that within your role you see, I expect probably good things and bad things, that lawyers are doing on social media? Are there any, whether it's technology or social media snafus that you see that create problems for lawyers?
There's a lot of the stuff that you read in bar journals and things where lawyers have, breach of confidentiality, that kind of thing. And we could talk about those kinds of things, but I'll tell you, what has my attention right now, given the craziness of 2020, given the political divide in this country, what I see is, and this is just a personal observation concern. There are some lawyers that can be pretty, for lack of a better word, aggressive in sharing their political spin or beliefs, and my concern is, does that, and I think the answer to this is yes, does that impact your potential client base? Because I don't care if it's Trump or Biden or any other issue out there. If you come out and take very, very strong positions, that in my mind tends to box you into a certain type of clientele. Now, if that's very intentional and what you're wanting to do, hey, God bless, that's fine. I think a lot of lawyers are doing this without thinking through, and it's not intentional. So that would be my concern, because I just see a lot of stuff and I shake my head and go, is that really what you want to say publicly?
Well, yeah, I agree with you. And there's a business axiom that we do business with people and companies that we know, like, and trust.
Exactly.
And you may be giving people an opportunity to get to know you, but maybe they're not going to like or trust you based on the content that you're putting out there.
There you go. Yep.
I agree. In our earlier conversation on your podcast, we talked about, it was about me. So it was about a lot of the things that I'm doing, and doing things that sometimes, as far as writing or podcasting or interviews with people, that make me uncomfortable, but doing them anyway. And one of the things that you said is that life begins at the edge of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I really liked that, and I would like you to expound on that.
One of the things, I've done a couple of podcasts that I just refer to as listening to your life. And this is a very, very important insight to me. When I started at ALPS, one of the very first things I had to do, and it was an odd way this all developed, I ended up at a major bankruptcy convention or conference, a national bankruptcy conference, as something of a keynote speaker. Scared the bejesus out of me. I had not done much in the way of lecturing and all this, but the CEO at the time and a good friend, he just, Mark, these are just people. It's going to be okay. And I just surviving that experience, I just learned, wait a second. I can either be better for this experience, grow and learn from it, or I can, live in fear and say, I don't ever want to do that again. And so I just learned that, and this has played out, I can't tell you how many times in my life, personally and professionally, when I am facing a decision, a choice, an opportunity, I've learned to choose the one that makes me most uncomfortable, because that is a signal. The way I refer to it is, my life is telling me that you need to take a look at this, because this is where you will grow. If I always choose what is comfortable, I will never grow. And that's not the life I want to have. So that, and I've just come to refer to this as where life begins. It's at the end or the edge of your comfort zone. That's where it all happens. And again, personally, professionally, it has played out in spades my entire adult life. So,
well, that reminds me, I just watched a part of an interview with Mike Tyson, who had a fight on Saturday night with Roy Jones. And I don't know whether the interview was before or afterwards, but the interviewer asked him, have you considered the possibility of failure? And he gave a much more thoughtful answer than I would have expected from Mike Tyson. But one of the things that he said was, whenever I have encountered something in my life that I'm scared of, I do that thing.
Yeah.
And I think that fits really well with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's something that I have tried to practice over the last few years of, looking at the possibility of failure and really asking, okay, what's the worst that can happen? And you have to really assess it. And if the worst that can happen isn't all that bad, then I've decided, okay, well, let's start a podcast. Let's write a book, do a blog, whatever it is. And it sounds like you really have adopted that same principle.
I have, and referring back to that first really major CLE event, what my biggest fear was in that whole thing? That someone would ask me a question that I don't have the answer to. I just had to learn it's okay to say, I don't know, and be comfortable with that. That was hard for me, but now, I have zero issues because no one has all the answers.
Yeah.
And so, it's, yeah.
I really like that. And then something else you said that is kind of a corollary idea is take the risks. It's worth it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Again, it's because that's where the growth happens. And you had talked in our earlier recording, you talked about in your own experience, writing it's very hard. People need to understand that pushing your comfort zone is hard, but the rewards, if it were easy, everybody would be doing this stuff. Growth is hard, but the rewards from it are so worthwhile. You just have to make the time. You have to take the risks. You have to learn to, get up if you fall down. I honestly worry about this with a lot of kids today. So many kids don't really know how to play. They're indoors all the time and gaming, and it's a bit of a stereotype, but there are a lot of kids that do. And my concern for them is they don't know how to get up when they fall down.
Yeah.
We used to play outside, and man, you get all dinged up on your knees when you wreck your bike, and and you get up and it hurts, but you get back on the bike and you keep going. Biking is a thing with me, but it's so I'm rambling, but it's yeah.
And I really like that. My wife used to do a workout video with Jillian Michaels, who was for a long time on that show, The Biggest Loser. And one of the things that I bet you I heard 1,000 times was her in that video saying, get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's a muscle, just like everything else. And you have to train it. And the first few times you do it, you're going to be really sore afterwards. But the more you do it, you just get comfortable with being uncomfortable and recognizing like this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Right. And well, the way I see that is that we are expanding, we're growing. So our comfort zone, if you will, is moving further along, and we can do more and more. So you keep pushing your comfort zone. And I call that growth. So I absolutely agree with you. It's a great. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's really good. And this is where I want to leave the conversation off.
Yeah.
Because I think that's just a really valuable place for people to stop and like consider in their own practice, business, personal life, what can I do going forward? We're about to enter a new year.
Yeah.
What are some goals that I can set for 2021 to really push myself beyond what I'm comfortable with? So that's where I want to leave it today. I really appreciate your time. If there are people that want to connect with you or find out more about ALPS, what's the best way to do that?
Hey, just send me an email. Mbass, MBASS. I shorten that last name of mine at ALPS Insurance, all one word, ALPS, ALPS, ALPSinsurance.com. And happy to visit with any of you at any time.
All right. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Please take time to rate and subscribe at whatever podcatcher you're listening on. And if you want more from me, you can find me at jeremywrichter.com. You can also find me on Twitter at RichterJW. And if you want the extra audio and benefits available at Patreon, you can become a patron at patreon.com/lawyerpreneur. Thanks for listening.